Listen to me carefully, because what I am about to share with you today will change the way you understand your life, your challenges, and your purpose. There is a secret hidden in the most powerful words ever written, words that have carried the weight of generations, words that have comforted the weary and restored the broken. I'm talking about the 23rd Psalm. You know it well, don't you? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It's more than just a comforting scripture. It's a declaration of divine truth that speaks directly to the core of our existence. But let me tell you, this Psalm 23 is not just about God's care for you. It's about his strategy for your life, his intention for your purpose, and the divine order he's established for you to walk in victory. The first line alone, the Lord is my shepherd, is a profound revelation. You see, a shepherd does not just lead, a shepherd guides with purpose. A shepherd ensures the safety, nourishment, and protection of his flock. He does not simply watch from a distance, he is with them in every season. When David said, the Lord is my shepherd, he was declaring that God is more than a distant deity. He is an active, engaged presence in your life, guiding you every step of the way. You are not alone. When we say the Lord is my shepherd, we are declaring a profound truth about the nature of God and his relationship with us. A shepherd is not merely a figure who watches over the flock. From a distance, a shepherd is deeply involved in the daily lives of the sheep. The role of the shepherd is one of intimate care, protection, and guidance. This phrase signifies that God is not a distant deity, disconnected from the challenges of our lives, but rather a God who is intimately involved, who walks with us in every situation, and whose heart is always set on leading us toward fulfillment and purpose. The shepherd's responsibility is to ensure the well-being of the sheep, to guide them to pastures where they can be nourished, and to protect them from harm. Similarly, when we acknowledge that the Lord is my shepherd, we are acknowledging that God takes responsibility for our lives. He provides the spiritual nourishment we need to grow, the protection we need to feel safe, and the guidance we need to move forward with confidence. We are not left to wander aimlessly through life. We have a divine guide who knows where we need to go, what we need, and how to lead us through every season. In addition to providing for our needs, a shepherd also corrects and disciplines the flock when necessary. The shepherd's staff, which is often used to guide the sheep and sometimes gently nudge them back onto the right path, symbolizes God's loving discipline. It is not punishment, but a loving correction that redirects us when we stray. This is a beautiful reflection of God's care, which is never harsh, but always aimed at bringing us back to the place where we can experience his best for us. When we say, the Lord is my shepherd, we are also proclaiming our dependence on him. Sheep are known to be creatures that need constant attention and guidance. They cannot survive without the shepherd's care. In the same way, we are declaring that we need God's direction, his wisdom, and his presence in every area of our lives. To have God as our shepherd means to trust him fully, knowing that he will always lead us in the right direction, even when the way seems unclear. It is a surrender of our own control, recognizing that his ways are higher and his plans for us are always good. When the psalmist declares, I shall not want, it is a powerful statement of trust and assurance in God's provision. To want is more than just a desire for material things. It speaks to a deeper, more existential longing, the desire for purpose, peace, and fulfillment. This phrase is not simply about having one's physical needs met, but about an inner confidence that in God there is a sufficiency for every aspect of life. The declaration that I shall not want emphasizes that with God as our shepherd, we are never in a position of lacking anything essential for our lives. God's provision goes far beyond the material. We often think of need in terms of financial security or physical comforts, but the true essence of need is much broader. It encompasses emotional and spiritual well-being. When God is your shepherd, he provides not just for your financial or physical needs, but for your soul's deepest yearnings. This statement affirms that no matter the circumstances, God has already given you everything you need to live out your divine purpose. The phrase also implies that in God we find the ultimate satisfaction. People often search for fulfillment in relationships, accomplishments, or possessions, but true contentment comes from knowing that our Creator has already supplied all we need to be whole. The world may promise fulfillment through success, status, or wealth, but these things often leave us empty. God, however, offers peace that surpasses understanding, joy that is unshakable, and hope that is eternal. In Him, there is no lack, not just in terms of resources, but in terms of the peace and wholeness that our souls truly long for. Furthermore, when we say, I shall not want it, acknowledges a place of surrender and trust in God's timing and provision. It is an acknowledgement that God knows what we need before we ask, and that He is faithful to supply it in His perfect timing. Even when we face hardship, loss, or uncertainty, this declaration is a reminder that we are held by a loving shepherd who will never leave us in want or in lack. We may not always have everything we desire immediately, but the assurance lies in knowing that we are under the care of a shepherd who provides exactly what we need when we need it. To rest in green pastures is not merely to take a moment of physical respite, but to embrace a deeper spiritual rest that flows from trusting in the provision and care of the shepherd. In the ancient world, green pastures were a place of nourishment, peace, and safety for sheep. They were the ideal environment for rest, offering abundant food and a secure place to lie down. Similarly, when the psalmist speaks of resting in green pastures, he is describing a state of peace and fulfillment that comes when we trust God completely to meet our needs. Resting in green pasture signifies that we are no longer striving, struggling, or seeking to find fulfillment on our own. The pastures represent God's provision. He leads us to the places where we can find what we need, not just for survival, but for thriving. In these green pastures, we are nourished, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. It's a place where we can renew our strength, find clarity, and be restored, because we know that our shepherd is guiding us to exactly where we need to be. However, this rest is also about releasing control. Sheep do not worry about where they will find their next meal. They simply trust that the shepherd will lead them to it. Rest in green pastures requires the same kind of trust. It means surrendering our constant need to control, fix, or plan every aspect of our lives, and instead trusting that God will provide. It's an invitation to stop striving, to let go of anxiety, and to find peace in knowing that God has already prepared the way. In the midst of a busy, chaotic world, it is easy to become overwhelmed with the demands of life, to be constantly on the move, and to feel as if we are never truly at rest. But when we learn to rest in green pastures, we recognize that peace comes not from our circumstances, but from our connection to the shepherd. True rest is found in a posture of trust, knowing that God has already placed us in the right place and that His provision is sufficient for our needs. It's a rest that doesn't just come from stopping, but from knowing that we are cared for, watched over, and loved unconditionally. Resting in green pastures also signifies that God leads us to places of abundance, not lack. Green pastures are symbols of flourishing and growth. And when we allow ourselves to rest in God's provision, we find that we are not just surviving, but flourishing in His care. It's in these moments of rest that we are able to recalibrate our spirits, realign our priorities, and grow deeper in our relationship with Him. It's a restful confidence that the shepherd has led us to the right place, and there is nothing more to fear. Still waters are a profound symbol of peace, offering a picture of tranquility and serenity that contrasts sharply with the turbulence and chaos of everyday life. In the context of Psalm 23, the still waters represent a place where the soul can find rest, free from the noise, stress, and distractions that often overwhelm us. Just as a calm, undisturbed lake reflects the beauty of its surroundings without distortion, still waters in our lives reflect the peace that comes from God, an unshakable calm that doesn't depend on external circumstances. When God leads us beside still waters, He is leading us to a place of divine peace, a peace that transcends the natural understanding of calm. This peace is not about the absence of challenges or trials, but rather about the presence of God in the midst of those trials. It is a peace that comes from knowing that no matter what happens around us, we are securely held in His hands. In moments of stillness, we find clarity and connection with God that is impossible to experience in the noise of life. It is in the stillness that we hear God's voice most clearly, and we begin to understand His will for us. The still waters also represent a deep spiritual peace that settles the turmoil of the heart and mind. When life becomes overwhelming, when we feel tossed by the waves of uncertainty or fear, God offers us the opportunity to be still and rest in His peace. Unlike the fleeting peace that the world offers, which often depends on circumstances, the peace that comes from God is constant and unchanging. It is a peace that remains even in the midst of storms because it is grounded in God's unshakable promises and His faithfulness. Just as sheep are calmed by the presence of still waters, we too find that God's presence brings calm to our souls. The gentle stillness of His care allows us to stop striving and let go of our worries. We can drink deeply from the well of His peace, knowing that He is with us and that He will sustain us through every challenge. The still waters invite us to rest in God's love, to trust that He has everything under control, and to experience the kind of peace that doesn't make sense to the world, but that transforms our hearts. In our fast-paced, often noisy world, finding still waters is a precious gift from God. It is a call to slow down, to quiet our minds, and to be present with Him in the stillness. In those moments, we are reminded that true peace is not found in the absence of problems, but in the presence of God, who brings peace into the very heart of every situation. To say that God restores your soul is to acknowledge that He has the power to bring healing and renewal to the deepest parts of our being. Our souls often endure weariness, brokenness, and wear from the struggles of life. We experience emotional exhaustion, spiritual fatigue, and times when our spirits feel depleted or disconnected. But God, in His infinite love and grace, offers restoration and invitation to be renewed, revived, and made whole again. This restoration is not just about mending what is broken, but about revitalizing the entire person, body, mind, and spirit, so that we can live fully and with purpose. Restoration is a process, not a one-time event. Just as a shepherd carefully tends to his sheep, ensuring that they are well fed, protected, and cared for, so too does God attend to our souls. He restores us not only by healing our emotional wounds or easing our burdens, but by guiding us back to the place where we can find peace, joy, and purpose again. When we are weary, God's restoration strengthens us. When we are burdened, He lifts us. When we are lost, He guides us back to the right path. The restoration God offers is a deep and holistic healing, one that addresses the root causes of our pain, not just the symptoms. It is a healing that transforms the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we live. God knows exactly what is needed to restore our souls, whether it's a time of rest, a season of reflection, or a renewed sense of hope. His restoration goes beyond our physical needs to touch the heart of our deepest desires and needs. It is a work of grace that heals, restores, and aligns us with His will, bringing us back into the fullness of life He intends for us. Restoring the soul is about renewing our relationship with God. When our souls feel dry, it is often because we have distanced ourselves from the source of life. But God, in His mercy, never forsakes us. He patiently calls us back, offering grace and forgiveness no matter how far we may have strayed. This restoration also brings clarity of purpose and direction. When our souls are restored, we are better equipped to discern the path God has set before us, and we can walk forward with confidence, knowing that He is with us every step of the way. Moreover, restoration is not a passive process. It requires our active participation. We must be open to receiving God's healing and trust Him to lead us through the restoration process. As we submit ourselves to His care, He begins to restore not only our souls, but our entire lives, making them more aligned with His purposes and filled with His peace. The paths of righteousness are not simply a moral guideline. They are the pathways that align us with God's divine purpose for our lives. Righteousness, in its truest sense, is not merely about following a set of rules or standards. It is about living in harmony with God's will, walking in integrity, and pursuing the good and just ways of life that reflect His character. When we walk on the path of righteousness, We are moving in the direction of our divine destiny, aligning our actions, thoughts, and decisions with the purpose that God has set for us. These paths are not always easy to walk. They may require us to make choices that go against the grain of society's values or personal desires. Yet, it is on these paths where we find fulfillment, peace, and meaning. The paths of righteousness are not only about doing what is right in the eyes of God, but about becoming the person God has created us to be. They are the routes that lead us into a life of purpose, aligning us with our deepest calling and leading us toward the life that God has destined for us. When we walk in righteousness, we are in sync with the Creator. Our lives begin to reflect His glory as we live according to His truth. Righteousness brings clarity and direction to our lives. The more we align ourselves with God's purposes, the clearer our purpose becomes. We begin to see that every step, every decision, and every action can serve to further His kingdom and bring us closer to the fulfillment of His plan for our lives. As we walk these paths, we are constantly being shaped and molded into the image of Christ, becoming more like Him in our thoughts, words, and actions. These paths also provide guidance and protection. Walking in righteousness does not guarantee a life free from hardship, but it ensures that we are always moving in the right direction, even through difficulties. The paths of righteousness lead to life, joy, and peace, even when the journey is tough. When we stay aligned with God's purpose, we are assured that He is with us every step of the way, guiding us through challenges and providing the strength to persevere. Moreover, the paths of righteousness are a reflection of God's love and faithfulness. He doesn't leave us to figure out our purpose on our own. He leads us on these paths, gently guiding us with His word and His Spirit. As we trust Him, we find that the more we follow His guidance, the more our lives align with His ultimate purpose for us, and we experience a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment that comes from walking in His will. The paths of righteousness are where we find true purpose, and as we walk them, we align ourselves more fully with the divine destiny God has prepared for us. To be fearless in the valley of death is not about denying the reality of danger or hardship, but about trusting in the presence and power of God, even in the most challenging circumstances. The valley of death represents the darkest and most terrifying experiences in life, the moments when fear, uncertainty, and grief threaten to overwhelm us. It could be a season of loss, a time of trial, or a situation that seems insurmountable. Yet to be fearless in these moments is to rise above the fear, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. Fear has the power to paralyze, to cause us to shrink back, and to lose hope. It is a natural human response to danger. But faith calls us to confront that fear with the assurance that God is bigger than any trial we face. In the valley of death, we are reminded that God is not distant or indifferent to our suffering. He is present with us, walking alongside us. His rod and staff, symbols of His authority and guidance, are there to comfort us, protect us, and lead us through the darkness. The fear that might otherwise grip our hearts is replaced with a quiet confidence in God's faithfulness. When we understand that God is our shepherd, we know that no matter how perilous the valley may seem, we are not alone. His presence is the key to our fearlessness. It is in the midst of danger, when everything seems uncertain, that we experience the deepest assurance of God's care. His love is our shield, His strength our support, and His peace our refuge. This understanding allows us to walk through the darkest valleys without succumbing to fear, knowing that God's light will guide us to safety. Fearless in the valley of death also means surrendering our need for control and embracing God's sovereignty. We often fear what we cannot control, but God's control over every situation gives us peace. Even when we walk through difficult times, we know that they are not without purpose, and God is using those moments to strengthen, refine, and prepare us for something greater. We are assured that He will never leave us or forsake us, and that every step of the journey is within His divine plan. This fearlessness also comes from knowing that death is not the end. While the valley may represent a season of suffering or a literal moment of facing mortality, for the believer, death is a passage, not an end. The ultimate victory over death has already been won through Jesus Christ, and because of Him we have eternal hope. Therefore, even in the darkest times, we can walk forward with courage, knowing that God holds the ultimate victory over death, and that nothing, no trial, no loss, no fear can separate us from his love. God's presence is the ultimate source of comfort in times of pain, confusion, and sorrow. It is not simply a comforting thought or an abstract idea. It is the tangible, real experience of being enveloped by God's love, peace, and care, especially in the moments when we feel most vulnerable. When we face the trials of life, whether it's the loss of a loved one, the weight of anxiety, or the uncertainty of the future, it is the presence of God that brings true solace and strength. To be comforted by God's presence is to experience a peace that goes beyond understanding. It is a peace that doesn't depend on our circumstances improving or our problems being solved, but rather on the deep, abiding assurance that God is with us, walking beside us, and holding us up in our most difficult moments. His presence brings us into a place of stillness, where the noise of the world and the panic of our own thoughts fade into the background, and we can rest in his eternal care. In times of distress, we often search for solutions, for answers, or for someone to help us bear our burdens. While these are important, there is nothing more powerful than the immediate comfort of knowing that God is with us. His presence has the ability to calm the storm within us, to quiet the restless soul, and to reassure us that we are not alone. God does not promise to take away every challenge, but he promises to be with us in every moment, especially in our suffering. God's presence also brings healing. It is in his presence that our broken hearts are mended, our fears are dispelled, and our weary souls are restored. He knows the deepest parts of us, the parts that no one else sees, and he is able to bring healing where it is needed most. His touch is tender, his love is unshakable, and his grace is more than sufficient to meet our needs. In his presence, we are reminded that we are not defined by our pain or our circumstances, but by his love for us. This divine comfort is not passive, it actively transforms us. As we experience God's presence, we find that we are strengthened to face life's challenges with a renewed sense of purpose and hope. His comfort empowers us to rise above our circumstances, to endure with grace, and to find joy even in the midst of hardship. We are no longer bound by fear, worry, or sorrow, because we know that God's presence is our refuge and our strength. Moreover, God's presence comforts us by reminding us of his promises. In times of pain, it is easy to forget the truths that give us hope, but when we are aware of God's presence, we are reminded that he is faithful to his word. He promises never to leave us or forsake us, and that in every moment his love surrounds us. This comfort is a constant, unchanging source of peace in a world that is often full of uncertainty. The more we seek his presence, the more we experience his comfort, and the more we are able to live with the confidence that we are always held in his loving care. Public blessings and victory are a manifestation of God's faithfulness and favor that is not just for individual benefit, but for the glory of his name. When God blesses us, it is not merely a private experience or a hidden treasure. His blessings are meant to be visible, to shine forth for all to see. The victories he grants us are not just for our personal joy or success, but to serve as a testimony of his goodness, his power, and his ability to deliver us from every circumstance. When we experience public blessings, it's not just an expression of his love for us as individuals, but a demonstration of his greatness to those around us. God's desire is that his people experience victory in every area of their lives, whether in relationships, finances, health, or purpose. These victories are not just fleeting moments of success, but lasting testimonies of God's work in our lives. Public blessings are opportunities for us to glorify God by sharing how he has worked on our behalf. These victories, whether big or small, serve as a reminder to the world that we serve a living God who is actively involved in the lives of his people. They are declarations that God is good, that he is faithful, and that he is the source of all true success and prosperity. When God blesses us publicly, it can often draw attention. And it is in these moments that we must remember the responsibility we have as his representatives. Our blessings and victories are not for self-promotion, but for the purpose of drawing others to the knowledge of God's love and grace. Our success becomes an opportunity to point others to Him, to testify of His goodness, and to offer hope to those who may be struggling or in need of encouragement. Public blessings give us the platform to proclaim that God's favor is not reserved for the righteous alone, but is available to all who trust in Him. Victory in the public eye often comes after periods of testing and struggle. And when God brings us through, it is a testimony of His power to overcome every obstacle. It shows that no matter how difficult the road may seem, with God on our side, we will emerge victorious. These public victories remind us that we are not fighting our battles alone. God is the ultimate victor, and our successes are a reflection of His strength working through us. Public victories inspire others to believe that they too can overcome, that they too can see God's hand at work in their lives. Moreover, public blessings and victories can sometimes come with challenges such as envy or criticism from others. It is important to remember that these blessings are not about seeking approval or validation from people. They are a reflection of God's perfect plan for our lives, and He alone is the one who determines the timing and the manner in which He blesses us. When we remain humble and focused on His will, we can navigate the attention and scrutiny that come with public success, always remembering that it is God who deserves the glory. Ultimately, public blessings and victories serve as a reminder that God is at work in the world today. He is still moving, still blessing, still granting victory, and still using His people to demonstrate His power. As we experience these blessings, we are reminded of our role in advancing His kingdom, sharing His love, and living as a testimony to His greatness. These public displays of God's favor are not just for us to enjoy, but for the world to see the living God at work. Overflowing blessings are a divine abundance that extends far beyond our immediate needs and desires, reaching into every area of our lives. These blessings come from God, and they reflect His generous nature, His desire to pour out His favor upon His people, and His ability to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or imagine. When we talk about overflowing blessings, we're not just speaking of material wealth or tangible possessions. While those may be included, the true essence of overflowing blessings is a fullness of life in all its forms: peace, joy, love, health, and purpose. It is the realization that God's blessings are not limited or restricted, but are given freely and abundantly, often exceeding what we thought possible. To experience overflowing blessings is to see God's provision meet every need, spiritual, emotional, and physical. It is to witness how God works in our lives in such a way that what we receive spills over into the lives of those around us. His blessings are not meant to be hoarded but shared, and as He blesses us, He equips us to be a blessing to others. These blessings are meant to flow outward, touching not just our own lives, but the lives of our families, our communities, and even the world. They reflect God's heart for generosity and His desire to use His people as vessels through which His abundance can flow. In the natural world, a cup that is full and overflows is a symbol of excess, an abundance that cannot be contained. Similarly, when God blesses us, He doesn't give in limited measures. His blessings are not just enough to get by, but are more than enough, overflowing in ways that allow us to be a source of blessing to others. Whether it's financial provision, emotional strength, or spiritual insight, God's blessings go beyond our expectations. They are the overflow of His grace, love, and mercy given freely and unconditionally. The beauty of overflowing blessings is that they often come in unexpected ways. Sometimes the blessings we receive are not the ones we were seeking, but they are exactly what we need in the moment. God knows exactly what we need when we need it and how much we can handle. His blessings may come in the form of a healed relationship, an opportunity to serve, or a moment of peace in a chaotic time. They may not always look like what we expect, but they always align with His perfect will for our lives. Overflowing blessings are also a sign of God's favor. When we are aligned with God's purposes, walking in obedience to His will, and living lives of integrity, we position ourselves to receive these blessings. God's favor is not earned, but is a gift freely given to those who seek him and put their trust in him. As we honor God with our lives, we open ourselves to his abundant blessings, knowing that he delights in blessing his children. In addition to being abundant, these blessings also bring a sense of peace and contentment. There is a deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that God has provided for every need and that his provision is more than enough. Overflowing blessings create a foundation of security in our lives, one that isn't dependent on our circumstances or material possessions, but on the assurance that God is always faithful to provide. His abundance is not temporary but eternal, and as we experience his overflowing blessings, we are reminded of his unchanging love and faithfulness. Moreover, the overflow of God's blessings is not just for our enjoyment, but for the fulfillment of his kingdom purposes. As we experience this overflow, we are called to use it to bless others, to spread his love, and to advance his kingdom on earth. The more we receive, the more we are empowered to give. Overflowing blessings challenge us to live with an open hand, willing to share what we have been given with those in need, knowing that in doing so, we are participating in God's greater work on earth. These blessings become a reflection of his character and a testimony to his goodness, drawing others to his love and provision. In conclusion, the powerful truths of Psalm 23 remind us that God is not only our shepherd, but he is also the source of everything we need to live a victorious, fulfilling life. From the comfort of his presence to the overflowing blessings he provides, we are assured that we are never alone, never lacking, and never without hope. Each verse speaks to a deep spiritual reality that God is actively involved in our lives, guiding, protecting, and blessing us in ways that go far beyond our understanding. As we walk through life, especially through its valleys, we can trust in his constant presence, knowing that he is always with us, leading us into the abundance he has promised. Our response to his goodness should be one of gratitude, trust, and a willingness to share his blessings with others. Let us live out the truths of Psalm 23. Allowing his peace, provision, and purpose to overflow in our lives and extend to those around us.